Welcome, everyone, to The Breakaway with David and Fabian. Today, our guest is Alex Balekian, who is doing something very tremendous. He's running for the California 30th District as a Republican. So we're going to get into that. Thank you so much for being on, Alex.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
So you're from a district where Adam Schiff is now going to run for Dianne Feinstein's empty Senate seat since she passed away. He's in there right now, right? Pro tem?
No, he's not. He's still a representative, but he's been missing in action.
Shifty Schiff is,
campaigning all over the state. He is nowhere to be found.
Wow.
Seems like he's been missing in action for about this whole time, 10, 15 years.
Well, I mean, it's definitely been for this last year since Dianne Feinstein died. I don't know if you all remember the Armenians of Glendale shut down a freeway to get Adam Schiff's attention when they weren't getting any attention from him as far as the ethnic cleansing in Nagorno-Karabakh. So that happened because of his missing in action status.
So can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background,
Sure.
and why you're running for this seat, and who your opponent is? Very important as well.
My name is Alex Balekian. I am born and raised in Glendale, Armenian, guilty as charged. I am a practicing physician in Glendale, and I stepped up to run for Congress for Adam Schiff's old seat because we need better public safety. So as you mentioned, Adam Schiff, who's been our representative for 22 years, is checked out because he's now going for higher office, Dianne Feinstein's old seat. And so when there were a bunch of career politicians running for this seat, who had been in charge for the last 10 to 15 years in California. So crime had gotten worse on their watch. Cost of living had gotten worse on their watch. Homelessness had gotten worse on their watch. I said, I'm tired of all of these people who are running our state into the ground. I got tired of waiting for the right candidate. So I decided to be the right candidate. And we have been the Cinderella story of the primary election season. Nobody had us on their bingo card. And so I pulled a surprise second in California's jungle primary. So people don't know that in California, you're not guaranteed one Republican, one Democrat. In fact, last year, Adam Schiff was running against a drag queen for this seat.
Maybe a girl?
Maybe a girl, yes, maybe a girl. So it was Adam Schiff, who was the centrist Democrat, and then you had this, far left progressive Democrat. So here now we have far left progressive Democrat Laura Friedman running against me, Alex Balekian, a moderate Republican. And we have gotten this far simply because our message of public safety, stay out of my bank account, stay out of my personal life has resonated with people.
That's incredible, Alex. And so you're running in California, not a traditionally Republican state, and at least in modern politics. And obviously, you're facing a lot of challenges. But in 2022, a lot of the victories that we had that actually gave us the majority in the House were centered in New York, California, Florida. So you obviously have an opportunity to make a huge change and to take Adam's seat right there. Mm-hmm. Let's start talking about one of the biggest factors in California and across very big metropolitan areas, and it's crime and public safety. And these being really big factors, especially the homelessness and public safety. And these are major concerns for majority of Californians, as it is, I'm sure, for here for people in Atlanta, Georgia, where I live. How are you going to address these crimes that are increasing in California, especially in your district?
So I will first start with homelessness. Okay, so California is notorious for having wasted $26 billion of our tax money, and homelessness actually got worse. It increased by 10% in LA County. And the reason why it's not gotten better is because people have not focused on the true problem, which is mental illness and drug addiction. And so I, as a physician, am uniquely qualified to say we need to diagnose the mental illness and drug addiction first, make it better, and then go to step two, which is housing. And so I'm uniquely qualified as a physician, but I will be perfectly positioned as a member of Congress to do this. Why? Number one, reopen the federal mental hospitals so that these very severely ill homeless people on the streets who are actively psychotic, they're a danger to themselves, they're a danger to others, get them off the streets, get them on treatment, and make them better. Step two is find where these people's family members are. We know that with mental health treatment, we know that with drug addiction rehab, when your family is involved, you have better outcomes. 40% of California homeless are not from California. So we need to ask them, where are you from? Where's your family from? Find them. And from Congress, I can transport people across state lines. I can give their home states federal dollars to establish mental health clinics, to establish drug rehab programs, and then they'll have their family support that will keep them honest. Finally, from Congress, the most important piece is bolster our border protection. Right? We have drugs coming in from Mexico. We have drugs coming in from ports of LA, Port of Long Beach. Don't defund the police. Fund the police. Fund Customs and Border Protection. Allow them to stop the flow of drugs so that these homeless people don't have a daily temptation on the streets. And also outside of that, you have high school students who are accidentally overdosing on fentanyl-laced pills that they think are something else that they're just getting off the internet. So those kinds of downstream negative effects, I can be perfectly positioned to combat from Congress.
I mean, all this sounds like very common sense solution that the vast majority of just not even only Americans, but logical people around the world would be like, that makes sense to me. Is there something that your opponent is doing that is contrary to these things? Is she so far progressive that she believes in the Gascon model where, you know, the perpetrators are actually the victims and we have to just give them all of our government tax money that they receive from us?
It's not just that. She authored a bill to give drug users clean needles and safe injection spaces. She authored that bill. It passed, but it was so bad, even our governor, Gavin Newsom, thought it was a bad idea and vetoed it. But you have places like Vancouver, like Portland, that have done this, and they have seen worse outcomes. And so my opponent is completely on the other side, and she enables the drug use. She apologized for it. I want to eliminate it. I want to disband these 10 cities. And you touched on George Gascon. George Gascon is our restorative justice DA who chooses not to charge people with petty crimes. And that is why we've had this supernova of petty crimes. And so I say, punish the criminals. I say, let's elect Nathan Hawkman as DA. I say, let's be tougher on crime and pass Prop 36, which is going to bring back the more strict punishments for these criminals. And then she supports George Gascon. She supports his reelection. She has actively tried to subvert. She has actively tried to subvert Prop 36. So you all might not know, but Prop 36 is a voter-initiated proposition that we put on the ballot by collecting signatures. The California legislature tried to undermine Prop 36 at several different time points to put their competing law against Prop 36. Why? Because they thought we were being too hard on criminals. No, actions should have consequences and criminals should be punished. So end of story.
Alex, for our viewers, can you explain briefly what is Prop 36?
Yeah, so let's rewind 10 years ago. Prop 47, which was sold to us as this measure that was going to rehabilitate criminals rather than jailing them and not teaching them a lesson. It was going to, make them better. And it was actually pushed by Kamala Harris while she was Attorney General. And what it did was it increased to $950 the border between petty theft and grand theft. And so, but there was the intention that people would still be prosecuted for those petty crimes, but they weren't being prosecuted for the petty crimes. They were being caught by cops, but they were the activist DAs were not charging them. So you had this catch and release system that then caused crime to go up exponentially over the last 10 years. So we had it. We, the voters, had it. So we put on the ballot Prop 36, which is going to reinstate a lower threshold for grand theft, which is going to reinstate more harsh sentencing for these criminals. Why? Because our elected officials abdicated their basic responsibilities of keeping the public safe.
Yeah, and we've seen just a surge in crime. I mean, literally the exact same thing that they did to San Francisco when you had Gavin Newsom was mayor of San Francisco, Kamala Harris was there, and a lot of people don't know this, is Gavin Newsom appointed George Gascon to be the guy in San Francisco, which is pretty incredible. So you have this trifecta of just far left progressivism that destroyed San Francisco. They all, some of them moved down here, did it to LA, and now who knows what they're going to do. Well, I know Newsom wants to go for the White House next, unless we, stop him. But why do you think people keep voting? LA's had a Democratic mayor for 28 years. It's only gotten progressively worse. Why do you think people have consistently voted for the thing that they're complaining against?
Because, and this is where I lay the blame squarely on the California Republican Party. The California Republican Party has been very good at recruiting candidates that are neither likable nor relatable. If you're going to tell people to vote for something different, then give them a viable alternative that draws them. Don't expect simply by being repelled by the existing incumbents that they're somehow going to vote for you. That is why we've worked our butts off telling people our message, giving them a viable alternative, me as a centrist Republican, rather than the far left Democrats that they have. So I think the Republican Party in California has been to blame by being inflexible on its social platform. People want the law and order. They want the low taxes. They don't want you to run their lives like we're at a Sunday school. And that's why, towing that moderate line, we've been successful. And unfortunately, a lot of people, a lot of conservative people have left California for Florida, for Texas. And so our numbers have been dwindling as well.
So because you're in California, you can't be a traditional Republican, because I don't feel like you can actually win a seat like Adam's seat right there as a traditional Republican. Do you feel like you're a little bit different, more modern version of a Republican, and you offer something different that appeals to the center left, some different policies or initiatives that may break away from the mainstream Republican Party, or perhaps the traditional one of it?
I am born and raised in California. I've lived my entire 45 years here. I grew up in a Deukmejian Republican household. George Deukmejian was our governor from 1982 to 1990. And you couldn't be Armenian in California and not be Republican, or just any immigrant, because George was all about public safety, stay out of my bank account, stay out of my personal life. So when you talked about, I'm not traditional Republican, I am a traditional, tried and true California Republican. And what that means is there is a heavy emphasis on personal responsibility and rugged individualism. And the government stays out of your life. And the harder you work, the more you make of yourself. That, to me, is what the Republican Party has always been. And I've been disenfranchised for the last 20, 25 years, since the Bush-Cheney era, when my party of smaller government, lower taxes, fiscal responsibility became the government of invading other countries, overthrowing other leaders, and running the debt up with all of our wars. So I've explicitly said that I'm a disenfranchised Republican, and my values have never changed since I was born. No matter what label you stick on me, I will still have those immigrant values of the home and family first and foremost, quality education for kids, and then work hard so you can achieve your American dream and build your legacy for the community.
I love that, Alex. Absolutely. And just 1 second, Fabian. So do you feel like that message actually sticks with the people, your constituents, your potential constituents?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the Democrats that I've met who have been opposed to some of the far left policies that my opponent has pushed, they say, I can get behind you because I don't like George Gascon, or I don't like these bicycle lanes that she's shoving down everybody's throat. But I need to know, are you pro-choice? And I say, it is not the government's role to insert itself within the doctor-patient relationship. I am saying that as a physician, and I will never vote for any abortion ban. And they say, thank you. And that completely assuages their fears. So I have to lead off with those, I'm going to say, for better words, identity politics, right? I say an abortion ban, that is not the government's role. Gay marriage, stay out of it, right? I'm a gay man. I'm married to another gay man. You wouldn't know that when I start talking, because that's not how I lead my platform. But those identity politics boxes that people on the left want to check, I tick off those boxes. I disarm them. And suddenly I'm not this crazy conservative, again, who's going to strip away their personal rights. No, I just want to keep you safe, and I want to lower your taxes. That's what I want to do. And then they're happy about that.
Yeah. And I think people don't even understand that we're going through this massive party flip where the Democrats are now what the neocons were, and now the conservatives are what the liberals were. It's like so I guess I never switched party. I just all remained the same. I just wanted my liberty and people out of my business. But I did want to talk about those dumb bike lanes, because I've been seeing them pop up all over the place. And I get the idea, but that's just kind of another idea, or another instance, I feel like, where government thinks they have the answer to something, implement something, and it just doesn't work. And now they put all this money into it. And now they're not going to go back and say, oh, I was wrong, let's redo everything. What has it been that your opponent has been doing? Because I know she was mayor of, was it Glendale?
Glendale, yes. This city, yes.
Can you tell us
she actually lives down the street. I can show you her house from here. Yes.
Maybe you could walk there and knock on her door, and we can have her.
Finally have a debate.
Yeah, an impromptu debate.
Right.
So what is some of the stuff that she's done there very, badly that that people should know about?
Well, it's really what it boils down to is local control. We want local control of our streets, of the decisions that affect our streets. And she is taking away that local control. First, as a member of the legislature in Sacramento, telling us from far away what we should be doing with our streets here. And then now wanting to take that to Washington, D.C. to do the same from thousands of miles away. So the bike lane saga, we have bike lanes here on a very busy boulevard, Brand Boulevard, that they put in. I am not against bicycle lanes. I am against the execution of the current bicycle lanes. And so I had said to them, we really need to put these bicycle lanes on quieter residential streets. I am absolutely all for decreasing bicycle vehicle accidents. And the best way to do that is to separate them so that the cars go on the busier arteries and then the bicycles go on the quieter arteries, quieter residential streets where you could put in speed bumps, and people, their kids are playing there, so they're gonna drive more slowly than they would on a big street that's gonna lead them to the freeway. Now what you got is people, me included, are avoiding Brand Boulevard, and we're taking the quiet residential side streets, which are no longer quiets. And that, if you simply asked the local residents who know their streets and their neighborhoods what is best, you would not have ended up in this quagmire in the first place. Another issue that she's doing are these onerous environmental regulations. So, she's been doing this for the last 10 years, passing more and more environmental regulations. I had childhood asthma. I am all for clean air and clean water, but we need measurable, meaningful outcomes that we can follow, not this, our children's future 50 years from now, which is not measurable. It's meaningful, but it's essentially emotional blackmail. And we here in Glendale have seen a doubling of our electricity bills, and there is another 20% rise slated for mid-2025. And last week I was out there at the city council ripping them a new one because they were discussing a $154,000 agreement with a consultant to tell the city how to spend more money to come into alignment with a new environmental law that Laura Friedman, my opponent, passed. So you have people who are hurting because of the electricity bills, and then here she is passing a new bill whose consulting fee is going to be rolled into the bills of the people who are hurting. And she doesn't even have the decency to show up and explain to them why she's making all these new regulations, but they're not working because clearly, what do they keep telling us? We need to do more. We need to do more. The world is going to end if we don't do more.
Yeah. I do want to say something about that bike lane quickly, and then David, I'll throw it to you. So I rode my bicycle across the country. So I can speak on this from authority. Is you don't want your bike lanes to be on a main artery in the first place. And the reason why people will take that is because when you're traveling from one point to the next, you go to your Google Maps or your Apple Maps and you put bike instead of car, instead of walk. And it's going to take you wherever it distinguishes those bike lanes to be. So you're actually bringing more people into harm's way by having them on major arteries instead of on the smaller streets. I mean, it's just insane that they're doing this.
Precisely. And also, I would love it. I would love it if we were all in Amsterdam and we all biked to work. But the reality is a minority of people use bicycles for commuting. They will use it for leisure. And so when people are trying to get to work, especially now, right, where they have to work 2 jobs to make ends meet, and you're making it difficult for them, you're telling them that they're bad people for having to drive to their job. I would love it if my home and my place of work were separated by a leisurely 15-minute bicycle ride. I would absolutely love that. That is not the reality for most people. And telling people that they're evil for driving to work simply to pay their bills is irresponsible.
It absolutely is. Thank goodness that I'm in Atlanta where we don't really have to worry about that. I feel like it. But so to stay on the topic of what your political opponent represents, because you're in a pretty progressive district that's seen Adam as their representative for, 15 years, 20 years?
22
for a
years.
while. 22 years. Wow. When it comes down to the southern border and the overall issue of illegal immigration, what is her position and what is your position when it comes down to that?
So one thing I want to say, this is not a progressive district. The reason that Adam Schiff has lasted so long is because the Armenians, who comprise 15% of the electorate here, tend to be very loyal. And he said the G word, he said genocide. And so because he said that, the Armenians have kind of been in his pocket. And that has
Wow.
been one of his biggest voting blocks. But this district is not progressive in the least. We are very immigrant heavy. Again,
Mhm.
immigrants who don't want their kids taught gender ideology without their knowledge. These are people who don't want to see homeless people and say, oh, it's not their fault. No, they want them in shelters. They want them in rehab. They don't want criminals let off with a slap on the wrist. They want them caught and prosecuted and punished to the full extent of the law. But as far as illegal immigration, so my opponent is completely wants to support, open, free borders. She voted for making California a sanctuary state. So what does that mean? I talked about drugs coming in through the southern border. There was just a very large drug bust by California Highway Patrol up in Fresno, where they caught, I think it was $500,000 worth of fentanyl. It is illegal for them to cooperate with Customs and Border Patrol, especially if they think that's coming in from the southern border, which it most likely is. It is illegal for them to cooperate with Customs and Border Control because of the law that Laura Friedman voted for. So although she might say that she's for reforming the immigration system, her actions, her votes have spoken otherwise. I am the child of immigrants. I know that we need to recruit skilled, industrious immigrants who are going to contribute to the productivity of our society, who need to embrace our Constitution and assimilate like my extended family did. So, and I'm all about a transparent points-based system, much like you would apply for school or a job, right? Your GPA, your SAT score, your volunteer history, right? So we say, okay, we want younger able-bodied people. We want people with job skills that the country needs. We want people who can speak English. And what you do is you allow people to apply, and then they get a ranking, and it's open. You can see where your position is on the list. And even if you entered this country illegally, we will give you a no-fault opportunity to apply. Please go ahead and apply, okay? However, you go back to the country from whence you came, the last port of entry, and you stay there until your name is called up. And we will determine, what job skills the country needs so that maybe your position moves up or down a little bit. We determine that year how many immigrants we're allowed to let in based on our resources. So I would like something that is very numbers-based, explicit, and that you don't jump the line, for example, if you just, pay a lot of money, much like these people, they talk about equity. If you're going to talk, let's walk the walk.
Yeah. All these policies that Friedman is doing, it sounds like all the other puppets that the globalist George Soros type money is funding to do the same thing that they're doing all over the country, where instead of dealing with local politics, they're giving the federal government and the state government the ability to tell them what to do. They're like little puppets. All these things she's passing, she's talking about issues that really don't pertain to the people in that district. It sounds to me like she's just another Kamala Harris puppet. I'm sorry, I don't know if you support Kamala Harris or not. I definitely don't. But do you feel like she's really doing this on her own, or do you feel like she's just tagging along to whatever her funders are telling her to do?
So I think what happens is you have people who want to climb up within the party, and they will sell their soul to do so. And they have the hot button issues that are important to them. So for her, it's climate. Okay. Does she really care about, children and, if a school teacher changes a child's pronouns and if that school teacher wants to keep it secret from the parents, that teacher is protected under law? Does she truly believe in that? I'm not sure. But then you have people like Scott Wiener, for example, also in her party, but that is his cause célèbre. So that he's all about, gay kids and protecting trans kids. So I think what they do is their ultimate goal is to work their way up into the party. They have their near and dear issues. And I think as far as the other issues go, they simply hold their nose and they sell their souls and they vote how the party tells them to vote so that her climate laws can get passed and Scott Wiener's trans, LGBT laws can get passed. And I don't know if they necessarily have that compelling, thought inside of them. I just think that they trade favors and they trade votes to get ahead.
Yeah. And do the Armenians know? What's Friedman's stance? Does she say the G word, or is that like, are they siding with her? Are they like, because she said it? How's that working out?
Laura Friedman's hostility towards the Armenian community is an open secret.
Wow.
Ever since she's been mayor of Glendale, she has had an open hostility towards Armenians. But again, Armenians tend not to vote. So that is why she's been able to, go higher and higher, because yes, Armenians will hoot and holler, but when it comes time to going to the polling place, I'll say, oh no, I don't want to do jury duty, or oh no, I don't want the government knowing how I voted, and they won't vote. And that's a practice that we need to change. But her hostility towards the Armenians is an open secret.
Wow.
Yeah.
I want to switch gears a little bit towards something that seems like California is always in the media for, and that is election integrity. Because we just recently saw how they signed a bill where they essentially don't ask for your ID when you go to vote. Is that correct?
Right.
That's about right.
Yes.
So if you're a congressman and there comes an opportunity to pass a certain election integrity bill, are you in favor of voter ID and more stricter policies when it comes down to ballot access?
I am in favor of making it explicit, transparent, and that people can buy into. And if you listen, 2016, Hillary Clinton was a sore loser and said that they did her dirty, and then she lost the election because of cheating. Donald Trump said the same thing in 2020. He was a sore loser and that he got done dirty. So at least we have bipartisan support that we need to make the process more transparent. What I would advocate is much like what we did in school at the beginning during a test. The teacher would give us a Scantron at the beginning of the period. You take the entire 50 minutes to do your test, and at the end you would pass it in with your name, and the teacher would see it and she would check off your name. So I would love it if I got a paper ballot in the mail 30 days prior, so that I could do my research, read up on all the candidates and all the propositions, and then have, maybe I would vote for 3 days, 7 days, whatever it is, where then you come in physically with your paper and your ID. You say, I've filled in my paper. You turn it in, you get checked off, and then that's it. That is how I would like things to happen. So I think that is a transparent system that mails everybody out a paper ballot. And again, when people say, oh, there are mobility issues or people can't do this, I'm a physician. We make house calls. We also send non-emergency transport to get disabled people to their doctor's visits, right? There are ways that a county can accommodate people with disabilities for a 3 to 5 day period. And that is how I would handle it. And I think from Congress, that's probably what I would do. Is I would say paper ballots for everybody given a month in advance, and then you have anywhere between 3 and 7 days leading up to the election day to turn them in.
Yeah, and get rid of those Dominion voting systems that apparently keep finding bugs in them, even though this is what they do.
What I told people is there's a touch screen, right? And then that prints out a paper at the end. So if there's any sort of bug in the code or any other sort of short circuit, I like it when I physically bubble in my candidate's name and then turn in that paper. So that is why I've always done paper voting, that I just mail in and I track like an Amazon package.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to see in the future some kind of blockchain technology where it all gets put. Therefore, you can create a unique NFT for each individual ballot, and it can't be replicated, can't be duplicated. It's all out in the open, so anyone can investigate. Everything is there on the blockchain. That's what I would love to see.
Yep.
And I would love to see
exactly.
Paper trail. So I did want to ask you about healthcare. So obviously you are a physician. You have a unique view into the way healthcare affects people directly. Can you tell us the contrast between you and your opponent and what that looks like?
So I'm a physician. I am still a practicing physician. I'm running this campaign while I run my medical practice. I work in a hospital. I work in clinics. I see where the inefficiencies are. The goal of any physician, of any public health program, is to extend healthcare and health coverage to as many people as possible and get the best outcomes for the least amount of resources invested. Okay. And so my opponent says that, but as far as arriving there, okay, her plans are poorly executed. The best example I'll tell you is voting to give illegal immigrants full Medicaid coverage. So that just passed an additional 1 million immigrants at the time. Okay. But if you're, illegally coming in 2 weeks, if you just came in 2 weeks ago, you will be added to the rolls there. So they extended Medicaid coverage to illegal immigrants. From a public health standpoint, I believe that we should get basic health coverage for everybody. But if you're not increasing the number of doctors to see the increased number of patients, by definition, the existing patients, their wait times will increase. So yes, you are the bigger person because you gave 1 million illegal immigrants health coverage. However, the citizens, the older people, the people with disabilities, the children who are on Medicaid, their wait times increased. A woman getting her mammogram, that has been delayed. So basic things like colonoscopies and mammograms that would catch cancers early, those are now being delayed. Those are not being done. So did you really serve the best interests of your people by doing that? So, her votes, again, have spoken volumes about how crappy her execution is going to be.
Wow.
And I think you touched up on something interesting there, and it's the fact that a lot of our programs are being used to essentially subsidize illegal immigration services. What is your whole stance in general with that? Do you favor certain subsidies towards illegal immigrants, or are you ready to completely cut that off for them?
So we need to prioritize what we're doing. So again, we have a finite number of resources. So government is just going to be like healthcare, right? You would love to do everything for everybody, but the realities of the world give you constraints. So I think a government should focus on the safety, health, and wealth of its own citizens in that order. So safety, first and foremost, public safety, right? Get the mentally ill, homeless off the streets and on treatment. Get the criminals caught, prosecuted, incarcerated. So that's public safety. Public health is, again, basic health delivery. This doesn't mean health coverage. It can mean something like, okay, let's subsidize small farmers to start growing organic, non-GMO foods. I mean, I love RFK Jr. and his Make America Healthy Again campaign, because he says a lot of our chronic diseases, diabetes, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, are from the poor diet that we ingest, these hyper-processed foods. And if it was simply affordable and practical for farmers to operate their farms at a profit and give us affordable, non-GMO organic foods, those subsidies that you invest, you win on the back end, because you are no longer having to pay for the cholesterol medicines, the diabetes medicines, and all that other stuff. So I'm this kind of a roundabout explanation, but I'm getting back to what you're saying is we need to have line items of priorities. Okay. So we need to prioritize public safety, public health, and then public wealth. When I say public wealth, the ability for people to open their own small businesses, right, and create jobs. So that is public safety, public health, public wealth for our own citizens. Then down below, if we have unlimited resources and people are working their jobs and they have disposable income that they can give to reasonable taxes, and you want to extend that to illegal immigrants, sure. But that is a low priority. That is a low priority topic. And until we actually have our own homeless veterans housed and treated with their mental illness, unless we have our own citizens getting basic health coverage, we should not extend it to other people.
Yeah, I truly see this whole critical social theory, progressive leftism that's been tried and tested, and it's failed not only in Los Angeles but in states and in cities around the entire country. And I do see this, and I'm sure not just me, but everyone sees this cultural shift back to more like America First policies. So I'm curious, does your opponent, have you seen anything out of her that she understands that the winds are changing, that it's no longer, your dad's conservative versus Democratic? We're like in a renaissance of this new age, I guess. Does she understand any of that, or is she just doing the same old politics?
She's doing nothing. She thinks she has it in the bag. She's not even campaigned. She hasn't showed up for any debates. She's barely put up a couple of lawn signs. So she knows that people will blindly vote the D over the R in this district, and that is what she's counting on, which is why we are having to hustle twice as hard to get my face out there, to get my message out there. So she doesn't care. She's just coasting. She was, in Washington, D.C. measuring the curtains in Adam Schiff's office. So that is how she's thinking and greeting. She's not even, doesn't, again, have the decency to come out and meet with her constituents.
Wow. That's terrible. So Adam Schiff, has he endorsed her?
He has endorsed her. Yeah, she was the anointed successor. And like I said, everybody started patting her on the back, calling her Madam Congresswoman. So I'm here to crash their party.
Yeah. What's the sense you've been getting from people that you've been speaking to, voters and things like that? And how do you think your message is resonating with the people of the district?
So our message is definitely resonating. Again, only 30% of the district knows her. Even less of the district knows me. So it was a matter of, okay, are we going to do positive messaging about me to get to know them? Are we going to do negative messaging about her, or are we just going to do a little bit of both? So what we've done is throughout this process, and we've been campaigning now for 18 months, Remember, we started in May 2023 for the March primary in 2024, and then just another 10, 11 months. So we've been doing this for a year and a half, and what we've learned is that all politics are local and all voting is emotional. So yes, people talk about Trump and saving democracy and all that other stuff. What are the local issues that matter most to people? Number one, cost of living. Number two, crime. And just number three, some miscellaneous stuff. So number one, cost of living. I go to her and I say, okay, she is responsible. She has voted to increase our gas tax. She voted for the California Air Resources Board and all their stuff they're doing. So all these extra prices they're paying for electricity, for gas, she is responsible for them. Here is how she voted, right? That's for cost of living. For crime, we have her on camera saying that she supports the reelection of George Gascon, the DA that everybody hates. He's polling at around 35 to 40%. So we're getting that message out there, and people are wondering, like, oh my God, how did she really? We're saying yes. Here it is on camera. Look at her say it. So, and then there's that miscellaneous stuff. The miscellaneous stuff being bicycle lanes. So this is in Glendale they had them. In West Hollywood they had them. Hollywood Boulevard, there's a stretch where they've taken out parking and a lane of traffic on either side. Business owners hate them. So many people hate them. And these are, I should show you this heat map that I've made where I go on things like Facebook and Nextdoor, and I look at people who have said anything negative about the bicycle lanes, and they are everywhere in these very staunchly Democratic strongholds. And then we've been sending text messages out to people like, let us introduce you to the bike lane lady. And everybody's just like, oh my God, I hate the bike lane lady. So, small things like that where we said, you don't know Laura Friedman? Let us introduce you to Laura Friedman.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. A reality that you may actually face if you win is political gridlock. I mean, the reality is that you may have a very slim majority in the House. How do you plan to work with that? Do you plan to work across the aisle and pass, things that are good for the average American, regardless if it's coming from the left? How will you go around that?
So I am voting as my friends and neighbors here in District 30 are voting, right? So how much help did I get from the National Republican Committee from Donald Trump? Zero. So how much do I owe them? Zero. So what is my single issue? My single issue is balanced budget. And I've said this multiple times, and I'll say it again here. I will not vote for deficit spending. I don't care if it's Democrat or Republican budget. If at the end of the day, it has a deficit and we're borrowing more and we're increasing our debt, no. I am upset at Donald Trump and the Republicans in 2017 for voting to increase the debt ceiling. That was a red line in my opinion. Another red line that I will not cross, the abortion ban. That is not the government's role to insert itself in the doctor-patient relationship. So on specific issues, I will vote how my people believe in, okay? And they are sending me there because of fiscal responsibility, because of social sanity, okay? Where we're espousing, again, ideas over identity politics. Things like, sending more money to Ukraine. That is not popular, okay? Do we want to help a country out that's being bullied by Russia? Sure. But if it's going to contribute to our national debt, then no. Then, we should start cutting, funding from elsewhere. So that is how I intend to govern. And if based on, am I going to vote just to appease Donald Trump or Kamala Harris? No. Okay, I'm going to vote to appease my people. And if it means that I don't win re-election after 2 years or after 4 years, so be it. Because at the end of the day, at least I have my conscience and my reputation, and I voted for those and for my people.
Yeah. I think that's what we're missing nowadays is people who have their own independent mind.
Right.
I think that, the two, or the monopolistic system, I call it, with both parties, or really just playing for who's going to win today, and then tomorrow you get it back. I think that needs to stop. And I love that I'm hearing things like term limits. I'm hearing things, multiple bills introduced to Congress about stopping congressmen from actually actively trading stocks while they're in Congress. Vivek has a 10-year moratorium on becoming a lobbyist after you leave office. These are all super common sense solutions that the majority of Americans want. The only people who don't want them are the congressmen themselves that are voting on the bill.
Correct. Exactly. And that's why I think, I think we need to, so for example, term limits, right? You need a constitutional amendment to put that into play. And so you need 2/3 of both houses to vote that in. In 2020, I believe it was, Republicans introduced a constitutional amendment in the House. It passed, but not by the requisite 2/3. So that's why it died and didn't go to Senate. But what people don't realize is you can call a constitutional convention with 3/4 of the states. Right. And so that's one thing that Arnold Schwarzenegger as governor was really successful at doing. And that's actually how he did term limits is he wanted the California legislature to pass term limits to police itself, and they didn't. And so he went above their heads. In him being an actor, went to the people and said, okay, I need you guys to vote on this proposition where we're going to put in term limits. And they did it, and term limits were enacted. So I think what we need are level-headed people who are going to go over there and say, look, this system sucks. We need to make it more for the people. And I think if you had people like me who get elected and just speak directly towards the people and say, look, there's this side route, this constitutional convention that we can call and buck the system with Congress, I think that's what needs to be done.
Yeah, and we're more than halfway there for the requirement that's needed for the Constitution, for the Convention of States, which is great. Yep. And we interviewed Mark Meckler, which is the guy that's behind the whole Convention of States thing. So that'd be incredible. In terms of the fiscal conservatism, so I like that you wouldn't favor or vote in favor of anything that would drastically increase how much we're already spending. So when it comes down to global issues, you mentioned something with Ukraine. You wouldn't be in favor of providing more, I guess, aid for Ukraine, or how would you go about this position?
So what I tell people is you can help Ukraine, you can help Israel without throwing more money at the problem, because we've been throwing money in Ukraine almost 3 years now. We've been throwing money at Israel for over a year now. So let's try to be a bit creative while not compromising our goals. So I'll give the example of Israel. Everybody says, oh, you need to have a ceasefire, get a humanitarian corridor. So first of all, release the hostages. Okay, release the hostages, and then we can talk about a ceasefire. Number two, if you want a humanitarian corridor, Egypt has a land border with Gaza. Egypt is supposedly our ally because we give them $1.3 billion every year. I say, rather than throwing more money at the problem, why don't we withhold that $1.3 billion from Egypt, force them to come to the table, work as a partner, open up the land border to Gaza, let in refugees, not let in Hamas, weed them out that way and have them, come to justice. As far as Ukraine goes, countries like Russia, Iran, Azerbaijan, Qatar, state-sponsored terrorism, we're going to say, they get their money from oil and gas. So who is the largest consumer of oil and gas in the world? We are. We are not energy independent. So if you suddenly started drilling for more oil, natural gas, making ourselves energy independent here, plunging the cost of oil and gas the world over because now we're just, self-sufficient, suddenly Russia's defense budget, Azerbaijan's defense budget, Iran's defense budget is decimated, right? And you have stopped those wars without firing a single bullet. So I think there are other ways, creative ways, that we can achieve our goals internationally without throwing more money at the problem. And again, that I think all stems from lobbyists, the defense contractors. They don't give mostly to Republicans or mostly to Democrats. It's a 50-50 split, because they want the war machine to keep on grinding no matter who's in power, be it Chuck Schumer, be it Mitch McConnell. So I think a lot of these global decisions are being made by special interests and not our interests. And it's helpful for them to throw more money at the problem because it's just more rockets that people are buying from them.
Yeah. The war machine never loses when there's war.
No.
And then you see people like your opponent voting for crazy policies. I wonder how much. I mean, I'm sure you've looked into her donors. I'd be curious to look into myself to see who's actually funding her and what organizations are funding the organizations that are funding her, because that's the real question. It's 2 layers back, and then you find out, just like Gascon, it's George Soros' Open Society Foundation. Interesting. Then no wonder why he's doing the things that he's doing. He's following the leader.
Right. And so you have the Tides Foundation, for example, which is it's this network, kind of a shell corporations of nonprofits where the money is just laundered and it gets to these people. And a lot of the California state legislature members, they go on these trips sponsored by, the Tides Foundation, all their associated nonprofits. And if you haven't heard about the Tides Foundation, that's really the biggest one. They're based in Canada. They're based in San Francisco. And so they just kind of buddy. The money goes back and forth, and people eventually lose track of where it actually came from. And that kind of dark money is going and funding far left progressives like my opponent, Laura Friedman.
And the Tides Foundation, I'm pretty sure, gets majority of its funding from the Gates. right? From the Bill Gates.
It does. Again, it goes back and forth. The Tides Foundation gives all the money to all the campus protesters,
Yep.
who are blocking campus doors, who are harassing Jewish students. So it's just a tangled web of dark money, unfortunately.
It sure is. We've done a deep dive into the mess of that, and how these campus protests get funded and how much they receive and where it comes from. It's absolutely crazy. A topic I want to talk to you about is actually the freedom of speech. Fabian, when we get asked what is one of the most important issues for us, I like that Fabian always consistently says speech. The freedom of our ability to speak. If Congress passes at any point anything that may infringe on the First Amendment, even though the courts can potentially overturn that, no, you're not going to vote. Okay, fantastic.
No.
And when it comes down to big tech, working with the government being able to tell big tech certain posts to take down, we're not in favor of that, correct?
I'm all about privacy. I mean, I fell out of my chair when Nikki Haley, during one of the debates, said whoever has these anonymous accounts that say these things and whip up misinformation, we need to know who those people are. We need to show their identities. I was like, whoa, lady, whoa. She is Dick Cheney with 3-inch heels. I mean, it's
yep.
So those kinds of things, I am bordering on, I'm a constitutional libertarian is what I am. Okay. So I find it sad. I think the reason we've gotten to where we are is because children these days are incapable of rattling off the 5 freedoms that are granted to us by the First Amendment. And, those were drilled into us because they're supposed to be very matter of fact. Like, that is what we had in this country. That is what makes us uniquely American. Kids nowadays couldn't tell you the 5 freedoms that are granted to us by the First Amendment. So I think that's where the problem is. And you have people who are willing to give up those freedoms because they are not taught just how precious and necessary they are.
Yeah. I mean, we go back to the history of education in America and with the Rockefellers and the things that his people said about just making people good employees and slaves and not allowing them to think critically because we want to keep them as little factory assembly line workers. But it seems like unfortunately, that system has gotten us where we are right now. I mean, we're falling consistently every year in math and sciences. For a nation that's the richest in the world, we have terrible education system. We're spending the most we've ever have per pupil and getting worse and worse results. What's your plan to fix schools in your district, and what would you do differently than what your opponent's doing?
So again, my opponent is an apologist and an ableist, and I want to, bring back the stern Korean mother who's not going to take an A- from her child. That's what we really need to aim for. So I think what we need to do is we need to look objectively at numbers. I give the example that in 2022, California tech companies applied for and received 40,000 foreign worker visas because they couldn't find that talent at home. So if we have a need in this country that is not being served, that we're having to look outside of our borders, that is a problem. So, technology, math, and science. If California is expecting to stay on the forefront of technology, we need people who are studying math and science. We shouldn't have to import them. So that is what I'd go for, is saying, okay, how many of our students are actually filling the tech jobs here? Filling those needs. And it's not just tech; it's actually trades. So again, if we are going to be the state of the future, the cities of the future, we need the electricians to make an all-electric city. The Bureau of Labor has a ratio that it puts out, 1.0 being the perfect match of the population to serve and also, the trades that are there. So California, for electricians, the ratio is 0.9, meaning that in California, there's about a 10% deficit for the population size of electricians. In LA County, that's 0.72. So you have a 28% deficit of electricians. And I'm not saying that every child needs to be a Nobel Prize laureate. Actually, they said that the new the new millionaire is actually the HVAC guy, right? Like, because people are going all electric and stuff. So there is a need, and I think if we are saying to our kids, or we want to make innovative, creative Americans, hardworking, industrious Americans that are going to contribute. I think that is what we need to do, rather than, if you want to do a French literature degree and study medieval poetry, great, right? I mean, what's the use of that? I'm not going to go ahead and, things like loan forgiveness. If you studied medieval French literature with a specialty in poetry, and you can't find a job, and you want your college loans paid off, no, what we'll do is what I recommend is right now there's an epidemic of untreated mental illness in this country. We have a shortage of social workers, of case managers, of psychologists who are able to help those people. So what I would say is, okay, let's go ahead and give loan forgiveness for people who are going to study social work and psychology and case management until we have met that need. And then we say, okay, no longer. Now we're going to turn to, I don't know, electricians or plumbers or HVAC people. But I think that's what we need to do is we need to integrate our teaching into what our country needs and how best to serve our changing needs.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And to wrap things up, just a fun question. Do you like football?
European football, not necessarily American football.
Not in okay, because we always
Who's
like
your
to
team?
Yeah.
For European football?
Yeah.
It would probably be Paris Saint-Germain, PSG.
Ah,
Paris
okay.
Yep.
You are a man of class, sir. You are a man of class. I'm an AC Milan guy.
I see.
Yeah.
I'm not that much into European football. So I can't really share, but cool. No, I was, California, there's a lot of different American football teams, so we try to ask a fun question towards the end.
Not the Raiders, no longer.
Oh, yeah, I know, right? You don't have them anymore, but
no.
Afuera, like Javier Malay says. Afuera.
I mean, I think, so the Raiders left, the Oakland A's are leaving, and I believe the Golden State Warriors, if I'm not mistaken, right? They're all going to Vegas, if I'm not mistaken.
Smart on their move. I mean, look at Gavin Newsom. He's even chasing sports teams away at this point. That's how bad it's gotten.
Yeah. Chased away Elon Musk, the sports teams, everything now.
Yeah.
Well, we really appreciate it, Alex. Yeah, thank you so much. And Fabian, close us off.
Yeah, I really hope you win, man. I mean, I think level-headedness and your ability to just really talk about deficit spending and be anti-deficit spending is something that we definitely need in the area. Armenians, if you're listening to this, go out and get your ass to vote because otherwise, I mean, I don't get it. If you're fighting but you're not voting, kind of missing half the whole solution there. But November 5th is the election. People can vote early, right? Can you tell them how to get out and vote and your name and everything?
So again, Alex Balekian running for Congress, U.S. District 30, which includes Glendale, Burbank, Sunland, Tahunga, Hollywood, West Hollywood, and the Wilshire area. In-person voting is open now, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. When you're in LA, go to locator.lavote.gov. Again, locator.lavote.gov, and it'll give you not only your closest station, but also the wait times, so you don't have to wait in line like you're at Disney World for 2 hours.